Cannabis. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. Today, October the 15th, we will have an educational direct grants cannabis webinar as a part of the Office of Cannabis pilot program. Before we dive in, I would like to acknowledge the hard work of both external and internal stakeholders getting us to this point. We'll then dive into our roadmap, followed by some opening remarks by Director Rodriguez. Want to quickly say thank you to our digital services team, Rick Johnson, Anita Chang, wanting to thank our city partners, City Administrator's Office, Naomi Kelly, John Pierce, Adam Wynn, Ken Bukowski. I'd also like to thank our city partner, Michael West here from the Controller's Office, Chief Lori Ajax of the Bureau of Cannabis Control and her team, Senior Advisor to the Governor on Cannabis, Nicole Elliott, Conrad Crump, Dahir Nasser, and the rest of the GoBiz team, certainly the great state of California, Director Rodriguez and her strong leadership to get us to this point for being able to administer grants, Deputy Eugene Hillsman for applying and receiving grants, and certainly the rest of the Office of Cannabis team, Nikesh Patel, Ray Law, Yulia Iskanzareva, Alex Sandoval, and our intern, Zoe Simotis. Many people to thank across our city partners, and importantly, thank you to the social equity community that has joined us here today. With that being said, I will start to share my screen to share the PowerPoint. We'll dive into a roadmap and hear from Director Rodriguez. So our roadmap for today, after we hear from Director Rodriguez, we'll give an overview of our technical assistance offerings, both components of direct cannabis grants, both for technical assistance and direct grants, eligibility requirements and considerations, the bidder registration process, and the supplier portal. Our city partner, Michael West, will be able to give some color to that topic, application requirements, the reimbursement process, timelines, final thoughts. We're hopeful to carve out some time at the end for a Q&A. Bear in mind, we are accepting written questions and we'll post a corresponding frequently asked questions to our website. With that being said, Nikesh, if you wouldn't mind to pass the ball to Marissa for her opening remarks.
Can you hear me? Great.
Yes.
I just want to say, wow, what a long time coming. Thank you so much to the equity community for your patience as the city of San Francisco has worked hard to get us to a point right now, October, to roll out the first of its kind grant program to our equity community. This has never been done before. And I want to take a moment just to appreciate that, to appreciate what went into all of that, the advocacy work on the ground, all of you who have come since day one. This has been something that I've been committed to in this role to get this over the finish line. But for that to happen, I want to first and foremost thank the individual who brought this to you today. He was so gracious in thanking everyone else, but I certainly want to thank Jeremy Schwartz for standing this grant program up here in our office. This is something he's very passionate about, and he has spent hours and hours and hours working on. So I want to thank you, Jeremy, for getting us to this point. I know we're already rolling with the technical assistance support process. So there's two components to the grant work. You've seen it, you've seen the emails. There are two segments. You have the grant money that's going to go to the technical assistance providers who are going to assist equity, and these are the direct grants. This is how to apply for direct grants. The concept around that, and you've heard me say it in the past, we will not be writing direct checks to anyone. This is a reimbursement program whereby individuals will be able to be reimbursed for an amount that they are eligible for. And I want to thank the Cannabis Oversight Committee for their effort. They put a lot of hard work into helping us craft this program. So I want to thank you. I want to thank all of you who took the time to call in and give their public comment around how this program should be set up. And it has been set up. It is, in my opinion, been done so in quite equitable way. I'm very excited to see this go into action. And so I don't want to take too long talking. I want to get into it. And that way we have enough time to certainly answer all of your questions and get all of this done and out the door. But again, a huge moment for the San Francisco equity community, a huge moment for the Office of Cannabis. We are thrilled. This day has come. And again, I want to thank everybody who lent a hand, who has supported it. It takes a village. The controller's office, certainly, our accounting unit at the office of at the city administrator's office. It's a small department. Please bear with them. As you know, it would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge the fact that we are going through a lot in this city and county, and as a country and as a world. This global pandemic has impacted all of us. This grant couldn't have come at a better time, thanks to the state. Thank you so much, Go Biz. Thank you so much, BCC, for awarding these grant funds to all of us. And we're going to make it through this. Cannabis always thrives. We're going to continue to support you in every way that we can. And again, thank you so much for your patience as we crafted what I think is a world-class equity grant program. Thank you, Jeremy Schwartz and Yulia, for all your support, and to our intern as well, Zoe, who is probably in a class right now at her high school. So thank you so much. I appreciate all of you. Let's get started.
Thank you, Director Rodriguez. To jog everyone's memory about how we got here. So certainly San Francisco was one of the early adopters of a social equity program designed to restore opportunities to those negatively affected by the war on drugs. We do have existing technical assistance opportunities available to the community. As a reminder, our partners at OEWD have a contract in place with a law firm to support folks with compliance. Similarly, we've stood up a first of its kind program with the Bar Association of San Francisco. Thank you to all the attorneys there, Carol Kahn, Princess Bustos, and many, many others. If you're interested in securing a pro bono attorney, please email us at the addresses here. For any of the attorneys watching today, we welcome additional applications to get you paneled and to serve the social equity community. Please feel free to use the emails you see here as well. As a reminder, there are two components of direct grants. The technical assistance offerings as a part of our request for proposal. We have approximately 22 proposals that our review committee is currently scoring, and we'll be excited to roll out those TA offerings later in this year or early next year. We've received two sources of funds, as mentioned earlier, one from GoBiz, one from the Bureau of Cannabis Control, and a part of these grants are being used for this direct grants program. Into direct grants, I'm sure everyone is wondering what they can get reimbursements for. These grants are to be used for startup and ongoing costs as a part of your commercial cannabis business. The eligible expenses are enumerated below. Reimbursements must fit within one of these categories. You'll see here we run the gamut anywhere from capital improvements, legal services, rent payments, and testing cannabis products among the other buckets you see here. Please keep your records, document expenses. The OOC may and will likely follow up with our operators to conduct inspections to see that these funds were used appropriately. Eligibility. Our eligibility criteria was informed by our social equity community, the Cannabis Oversight Committee. Thank you for all of our voting members and non-voting members collaborating on this item. Folks, to be eligible, you must have met this criteria by yesterday. This includes being a verified equity applicant in the city and county of San Francisco, and also having a commercial cannabis business application that is either processing, build out, under construction, or approved. Anyone else will not be eligible for this round of grants. We are hopeful that we may redistribute funds at a later time next year after March, and similarly will garner input by the Oversight Committee and our community. We have about 88 unique equity applicants that are eligible for these funds. The breakdown will depend on your percentage ownership and where you are in the process. So to get more granular about these eligibility and fund disbursements, as a part of Oversight Committee recommendations, meeting minutes are available on our website should you wish to review the recommendations further. There are essentially three buckets of groups. Group 1, 100% owners, Group 2, 51% owners, and similarly Group 2B, 40% owners, and I'll explain why it's broken out in this way. So similar to our processing priority, we prioritize equity applicants first before getting into other tiers. Similar here, we will go through these groups in this order. The funds breakdown is up to $100,000 for social equity applicants that own 100% of their business and secured a formal referral to planning. That doesn't mean two social equity eligible groups that together have 100% ownership of their business. It is one person, 100% ownership of their business with a formal referral to planning can get up to $100,000. For everyone else, this includes 100% owners not referred to planning, those with at least 51% ownership, and those with at least 40% ownership will equally receive a similar amount, approximately $49,000 to be used for these eligible expenses. So again, please be aware of your percent ownership interest, where you are in the process, and that informs how much money you may receive for eligible reimbursements. And with that, I invite our city partner, Michael West from the Controller's Office to speak about the supplier portal. Michael, if you'd like to share your screen, please let us know. Otherwise, I'll have this slide. Nikesh, will we be able to get Michael West on?
Yeah, if you could just share. It's grayed out right now.
Okay.
Okay, so Michael, I'm going to pass the ball to you. You should have it in 1 second.
Great. Okay. All right, can you see my screen? Oop, hold on. Let me just share that one. There we go. Okay, so thanks for having me. Number one, I appreciate you guys being so interested in the bidder registration process and kind of having me come on and walk folks through how the process actually works. And so just so everybody knows who I am, my name is Michael West. I work in the Controller's Office, and I'm the Strategic Sourcing and Supplier Management Functional Lead. And so what that means is anything related to system functionality on the supplier portal side, or any functionality related to the sourcing module internally, and also the supplier module internally. So we really kind of have a different purview of the systems, so to speak, versus the other teams that are peers of mine. And so what I'd like to do today is just kind of like show you from the very beginning, step one, how you'd even come in and find the supplier portal and kind of what the steps are to be able to become a registered bidder. So with that, I will pull up. Here we go. Okay. So I just went to Google, right? And the good news is about the supplier portal is you can get in there and look up information and you don't even actually have to be logged in. So I want to start there. So you can just type in CCSF supplier portal. And we'll also share this link with everybody as well, but I just want to kind of show folks how to go through it from scratch. And so you'll see SF City Partner, SF Gov, so know it's the correct link. And so this is what our supplier portal looks like. So anyone that's coming into the system, whether you're just poking around, you're already a bidder, or you're already a supplier, you can come in and do a lot of things that traditionally you could not do on a different vendor's supplier portal, right? And so there's a lot of different options here, but what I wanted to go to first is view opportunities. So you can notice that I'm not logged in, okay? You have the ability to just go in and click on any of the links and kind of look for information. So this is where all of our events are going to be kind of socialized to the public. And so I wanted to show you guys how to do some searches. The one thing you can do on searches is you can come in and actually select a department if you know what department you're looking for. And that kind of really reduces the amount of results that you would get back with your search. If you also have the event name, you can put the event name in. And as my understanding, we haven't created a sourcing event yet, so I'm just going to pull up one that we've already worked on, but you could put in like Canna, right? And then whenever the cannabis sourcing event is out there, it would pull up anything that has the word Canna in it. Okay. So there's event 3928. So this is a sourcing event that we did for the feeding unit for COVID. And this is just for illustration purposes, just to show you the functionality without being logged in. So you can come into the sourcing event and it gives you all the information, which Jeremy and team will make sure and outline in the sourcing event itself. So you can kind of read through and say, okay, do I meet the like high level header information requirements based on the information? It'll also give you directions on where to submit your proposals to, things like that. So what I think is neat is without even being registered, you can come in and you can look at attachments. So this one has like 20 attachments to it, which is kind of a lot to go through. But for this particular event, we had to go through 4 different languages, which are the San Francisco city languages. There's 4 of them. And then also add in pertinent information like, you know, who's already met them in calls, things like that. Okay. So again, anyone can come in and have a look at it. If you try to place bid, it will just give you a message that says, please read the detail section for this opportunity. And the way that it's set up, we're not actually having people bid on this event, and we'll go through that once I actually register. So I'm going to go back to the front. And any questions so far before I get started with the bidder registration process?
We'll likely take questions at the end.
Sure, great, okay. So like on the front page, it just gives some main information. You know, it gives our vendors different announcements to let them know, you know, we got planned downtime. We also have some information about nonprofits, et cetera. So it's a pretty good resource to come in and find the latest and greatest information. And one thing we try to do is mirror the information that's on the controller's office website, right? Because they kind of have their own sourcing process, but they still use the system. And so we really like to think of this as a one-stop shop for getting information and being able to help people find their way into doing business with the city. I don't think we need to cover emergency vendors. We've got this help icon so you can contact folks. So if after this, you decide that you want to register as a bidder and you run into any kind of issues, you could come in and create a ticket. And if you create a ticket, that will go to our Tier 1 support. Tier 1 support knows about a lot of the issues if you were to run into them, and would triage the ticket to my team and let me know. Okay, so if you did run into any issues, we still will be here to support you, and I've got a whole team that can manage those tickets as well. There's also some facts, right? Like you can't use Internet Explorer anymore, how to not deal with pop-up blockers, things like that. We've got job aids for training, which is really nice. So if after the session, you're like, okay, what do I do as a bidder for next steps? What do I do as a supplier for next steps? You can come here and actually, without being logged in, come in and have various different job aids related to bidders and kind of getting things set up with your user profile. All right. And then we also have training where it kind of takes you to the same place. And then we also have become a supplier. So that will be the next step after you're registered as a bidder. Okay. So let's go ahead. Now I'm in production, and normally we don't have production accounts, but I'm just going to do a test one so that you guys can see what the process is like. And so to get started, you just click on start or continue registration. So you have the ability to start, save for later, and then come back. All right. So the first page is just more informational, kind of letting you know that you need your tax identification number, your DUNS number if you have one, information related to your business registration certificate with the city and county, and also your W-9 form. So I think, you know, this information usually will take people more time to get their information registered as a bidder into the system because maybe they don't have this right there on their desktop and they need to go back and look for it. So it's kind of a good checklist to make sure that you have everything that you need so you can just do it all at once. All right. So then I'll just select, I'm ready, let's begin. Okay. So you can start a new registration form, or you continue where you left off. In this case, we're going to start a new registration form. And I'm just going to say we're a business for today. And you also have the option of saying you are buying goods and services or selling goods and services. So generally speaking, it's going to be selling goods and services, right? And you really can just pick either one that you want. So I'll just go with selling. Next. Okay, so let's just call this Canna program, and that's it. Okay. So your 10 tax identification number. If you're already registered in the system with the city, and you put in a tax registration number that's already in our system, it will give you a notification and say, hey, you already have a record with the system. Please contact user support to get your username, password reset, things like that, so you can get into the system. So please don't create an additional account if you already have one. I'm just making this number up, so hopefully no one has it. And I don't have a DUNS number either, so that's essentially optional. And the thing here is if it's got a red star by it, generally speaking, it's a required field, and the system won't let you move onward until you fill in those dimensions. So if you happen to be a joint venture, make sure and check this box at the first stage of the setup process so that you can kind of designate who the JVs are. We're not a JV here, so we don't need to worry about that. And then it just asks you 6 questions. Now, number 1, would you like to be included on the city's emergency supplier list? If you were like selling PPE, you would say yes, or if you want to be able to assist with other types of commodities or services, you would select yes. I'm just going to say no. What is your business structure? We've got all kinds of different options here. So that's another good thing to know is like what's your business structure for your company? So you can just select that. I'll go with C Corp. And then 2A, if you chose nonprofits, please indicate what section your code applies to. So like, for example, the 501c3 entities. Now, here's where you attach your IRS W-9 form. Now, the system won't say, hey, this doesn't look like a W-9, so it's just going to let you upload any documents. So make sure that you upload your W-9. And I'm just going to upload just a random file. Okay. And you can add more too if you need. So we're going to return the registration. Okay. Is any owner, partner, contractor, employee, family member of anyone in the city and county, including commissioners, board members, etc. So I definitely don't have that. And if you answered yes, you have to give a little excerpt on kind of breaking down what that means. And then does your company possess a current registration business certificate? I'm going to say yes. And I can just choose any number here again. And I'll just choose a random date in the future, end of the year. Okay, so all of these questions are not necessarily mandatory except for 2 and 3. But the other one that's mandatory, and it's a new feature, is 6. So if you ever registered before the 12X legislation that came down on advanced states, you wouldn't have seen this option. But now we actually added it in, and it's a required field. So the reason for this is for users to be able to go in and look at what state you do business in and make sure that we're not trying to do contracts with someone in one of those banned states unless they have an exception. All right. And so we've got everything filled out here, and we'll just go next. Okay. So you at least need one address. So I'm just going to go 1 Canna Program Way. All right, and you can put other addresses here if you need to. I'm just going to put in San Francisco and 94115. Okay. It does ask you for the state again here, but it can be different than where your company is actually created from, right? So it just depends on what the contacts are. And I'll just type in my email address. Okay, so if you have any other addresses, you can just check this box. Like if you have a different place to remit invoices or POs to, you'd want to be able to add that in here. For me, I'm not going to do that, so I'm just going to have the one address. And notice you can save for later. So let's say we're now on step 3, there's 6 steps. You kind of want to take a break, take a breather. You can just save for later and then come back into this page and pick up where you left off. Okay. All right, so I'm going to add a contact, and you do need at least one contact, and usually this is going to be the primary person in the organization. So, for example, your CEO, your CFO, executive management or leadership, or the person that's going to be managing the supplier portal account and submitting bids. So I'm going to put myself as a primary contact, and I'll come up with a different name. Okay. You put in your address one more time and your phone number. All right. So I'm going to put contract or contact type as executive management. You've got a lot of different options here. You can also just leave it blank, so it's not a required field. Okay. And I'm going to use Canna Program as my user ID. So when you set your requested user ID, the system will tell you if it's already been taken and to choose a different one. And when I do my testing, I just like to use the same company name. But like if I normally log in, like I'm Michael James West, I'll use like MJ West 11. And so that's really up to you how you want to set that user ID. But when you do, make sure that you keep it. And you will get an email that's automatically generated from the system that lets you know what your user ID is. So you could just put that in a folder for sourcing in your inbox and refer back to it if needed. I don't have any description to add. You can put in, if you want to have a different language, there's many, many different languages to choose from. I'll select my time zone. And the time zone is important because, and we're probably mainly on the West Coast in California here. But like if you had a sourcing event that ended at 2 p.m. in the West Coast, that's 5 p.m. in the East Coast. So it's important to just make sure that you set it to the proper time zone, and also Pacific and you select your currency, which is generally going to be US dollar. All right. So here's just kind of like a recap of what you added in. It allows you to delete, it allows you to add in other contacts, and again, you can also save for later or go back a page. So we'll go on to step 5. And here's the moment where I want you guys to take note. So I did a search in the system on what category codes we should associate the source and event with. And you can come in here and you can type in a name like auto, and it'll pull up several different kinds of things to choose from. And what these codes are is they're NIGP codes. It's like the National Institute of Government Products. And we've got a list of like 8,200 category codes. You can actually go up to 35,000. So I'm just going to come in and look at grants. And then you can go deeper. And then there you go, you have grants, higher education added. So what you're looking at here is the high level NIGP code. So for example, this grants higher education says 95,000. But the one that I found for you guys is actually 95013. And instead of showing people 8,200 different category choices when they're doing a registration, we just rolled it all up. So if you chose 95,000, it's going to capture like all 150 category codes within that category, so that anytime a sourcing event is created that has that category associated with it, then you would get an email notification that says, hey, Mr. User, there's a sourcing event that's related to category 95,000. Please go to the supplier portal and have a look and see if you want to submit a bid on it. So I'll go with 00. There we go. Okay. And then you can add as many as you want. So I can add like automotive. All right. You can add health stuff. All right. There's all kinds of options to choose from. You can get really granular. And again, you can choose as many as you want. So I recommend choosing as many category codes as possible. And you also have the ability to come in and add in additional categories at any time you want once you've got your bidder registration set up. So it's not just like a one-time setup thing. You have the ability to come and make changes on the fly whenever you see fit. Okay. So then the last step, terms and conditions. This is just a general disclaimer. You know, that's kind of a legal document from the city and county. Most people probably don't read through it, but I have read through it and I'm okay with those terms. And so the key thing here is to make sure that your email is what you want your email notification to come into from the system, with like your user ID, bidder registration, confirmation, things like that. And so I'm just going to submit. And I've successfully registered a new bidder. Okay, so what happens now, here in a minute or two, I will get, oh, I already got it, look. So here it is, letting me know. Here's my registration ID. And then also, I've now been created as bidder 29159. Okay, it also lets you know that the system will be sending you some temporary login credentials. And it's usually fairly quick, usually within like 5 or 10 minutes. So it won't, normally would not be a day. But they just put that in there for just to make sure that they're covered. Okay, so that is just registering as a bidder. All right. What I want to show you now is an actual supplier account. Okay. And so just to kind of, before I get into this, when you get your email notification from the system that shows your temporary password, you're just going to go back to the same supplier portal. You put in your username, you put in that temporary password, and then it'll ask you to select some MFA questions, multi-factor authentication. You have to select 3. And for me, what I normally do is like it'll say, what's your favorite book? What's your favorite sports team and what's your first pet's name. If I'm just doing testing, I'll just put in like test, so they all have the same password. But I'll leave it up to you in terms of how you want to set your MFAs. And then also you can do an MFA through your mobile phone where you get a code and you get that code and it allows you to log in. So once you go through that MFA setup, it'll ask you to, once again, put in your temporary password that's system generated from the system. And then it'll allow you to actually set a personal password. So you'll have to put that in twice. Once you've done that process, you're then able to get in with your username, your personalized password, and you'll be able to navigate in and out of the system just like we're about to do now. All right. And one key thing here is, for me, I do a lot of testing, so I'm going in different environments all the time. And so I never say trust this device for 30 days, but instead of having to go through this MFA question, you can just say trust this device for 30 days and it won't ask you again for a long time. So that's a good click to do. Verify. And as you'll notice, the front page is much different, okay? So let's just go to how the front page looked in the very beginning. Okay. All right. So you still have the same options up here at the top, right? You also have an option here. You can just drop down. It shows what the status is of what you are. So for those just registering as a bidder, when you log in with your personal password, it's just going to say your username and bidder up here. When you decide to convert from a bidder to a supplier, which you'll need to be in order to be cut a PO or a contract and paid in the system, will need to be an approved supplier. Okay. So some options here is you can look at the My Work Center, and so that's just down here below. Okay. You got the option of changing your password or your MFA. So if you forgot or something like that, you can change them there, and then you can also log out. All right. So then I know it looks like my account needs a lot of attention, and this is by design. So all this functionality is pretty new and not a part of the delivered PeopleSoft. So one thing we noticed is the tax registration process, a lot of people are falling out of being up to date and ended up being expired. And so what we did is we created some queries and some logic in the back end of the system to go in and look at the supplier record and actually give a notice based on how delinquent they are, what their current status is, and some information on how to get them into a good non-expiration status. So once that's good, the system will automatically make this green. So that's cool, and you'll know that you're good to go there. 12B declaration process. As I understand it, we have a 12B declaration, like we don't have to go through it for this particular program. Is that right, Jeremy? So we got an exception.
Oh, on the 14B.
14B, okay. So for 12B, I think it's advantageous to go through this process. You don't have to go through it to set up as a bidder. So I would just start out with setting up as a bidder first, and then you can go through that 12B declaration process, which is fairly long, and there's a lot of questions to answer. And so if you guys ever had any issues with that, my team built all that functionality, and we can help walk you through it whenever you're ready. The other thing that we have here is the 12X headquarters state data. So I never set my state headquarters because I wanted to be able to test the functionality in production. So if I change this, then this would go away and I wouldn't be able to do any more testing. So that's just kind of letting me know that it still works, and I can come in here and pick. And if you hit go, it would just do a change request and then it would update your profile. But I'm not going to do that, so I don't mess up my account. Okay, so you got your announcements still here. You want to see them like that they were on the front page. And this is going to look a little bit different after our system go live because we've got this new functionality that we're ready to deploy that's going to make the announcements a lot better look and feel and more intuitive for the user. And so you're going to have a few different options versus what you're seeing on the screen here, because what my account is it's an unapproved supplier. So I've registered as a bidder, I converted as a supplier, but I'm not approved, right? And all that means is I'm not going to be going in and doing any POs or getting paid by the system as an unapproved supplier, okay? And so all the information that you have set up in your bidder registration process is then subsequently carried over to your supplier records. So we set up that Ethan Weston here, and under contacts and addresses and categories. One thing that the group may or may not want to do is enroll in ACH payments. And I think that's probably a good idea if you do. And ACH payments generally would charge 1.5%, and this is all done through Bank of America. But when you click on this link, it gives you a code for the city and county, so you don't get charged that 1.5% on every one of your payments, which I think is a really neat contract that we did with Bank of America. You can also request account changes, so if you want to come in and like change your state, just waiting. Okay. So you can expand all, and you can just come in here and change different information, right? So if you change something, that would then go to the supplier management team, and they would just make that approval, and then your record would be updated in the system, and that information would then flow to the supplier portal in parallel with one another. So we don't need to do one of those. Okay. And then you also have the ability to change your password again. So in terms of e-settlements, I think that might be a little over folks' heads so far. We only have around 700 out of like 40,000 suppliers set up on e-settlements. So I think that would be another training session, Jeremy, once people are successfully in the system and registered and actually converted to a bidder. That would be another good follow-on training session. Okay. And also with the 12 and 14B2, right? But I don't think folks are going to be worrying about that right now. They're just going to be worrying about getting registered and the ability to get into the system and actually submit a proposal. So what I'm going to do is look at view opportunities, and this is that same link that's up at the top, right? So we tried to put links kind of all throughout, cascaded into different pages so that people didn't have to hunt and peck or go all the way back up to the top. Okay. So I'm just going to pull up a random sourcing event, OCA, from contract. Now this is where I am logged in, okay? You can still come in and see your attachments, download that on your computer, go through all the information, see if it suits you in terms of what you can provide to the city for products and services. And I'm reluctant to go in and accept the invitation and place the bid because this is actually in production. But what people would want to do is come into the event once Jeremy and I kind of go through setting that up in the system, and we'll again send you this link. We'll send you the link to this to the actual sourcing event itself, and essentially try to tee everything up for you so you have it all right there for you. Okay. So the find a partner and view partner request, you don't have to worry about that. That's more like if you're a Chapter 6 construction, professional services, Chapter 6 type of entity, and you want to like sub out with somebody or you want to find a prime. Okay, so again, when you come in, just make sure and accept that invitation. And the key thing about accepting the invitation and not just going straight to place bid is this is going to be a closed sourcing event. And the way that our system works is we can invite people into this particular event. And once you're invited and the event is live, if you come in and accept the invitation, that will then transmit to the internal side. And so when Jeremy and I are looking at the sourcing event, we can actually see who all has accepted and kind of get an idea of who we expect and what quantity of entities you're expected to get proposals from. Okay. And then in the place bid, I'll just go into that since it won't put me on the list. I'll just say yes. Okay. So all the same information, you have some different options here. And, there may be one line item, there may be several line items, but it's pretty, pretty normal. You just come in and, what is my bid price? So let's say it's 100, right? Do 100, and you just kind of do the same thing all throughout. Okay. And there's also sometimes questions and attachments that are attached to each line item. I don't think in this particular sourcing event we're going to do that, but that's just one thing to look at. And then the other thing is, we're almost done. It seems like a lot, but once you get in here once or twice, it's a lot easier. And obviously they have a lot of line items, bid factors, is associated. How many questions do they have? Perfect. Ooh, there's 53. I'm not going to go through all 53. But the reason that I did that is, let's say that we only have 20 on the page. One thing I like to do is just click this validate button, right? And the validate button just makes sure that you're not missing any periods or zeros, or making sure that you have 2 decimal places, things of that nature, in each of your line items. And so I like to follow that. And then whenever you're done and you're ready to go on submitting the bid, you just select submit. And what happens after you submit the bid? So let's say the event started today and it doesn't end until next Thursday at the same time. So I submitted my bid today. We'll be able to see that this entity accepted in the system. So Drew will be able to accept the proposal from you. And then once the actual event itself is over, so let's say it ends at Thursday at 1 p.m., that's when Jeremy and team will be able to get into our internal system and start doing an analyzation of all the bid proposals that came in on that particular sourcing event. And from there, it's really on the departments in terms of next steps on, do they want to award a particular bidder or supplier? Do they need to convert that bidder into a supplier so they can cut a PO contract? And kind of essentially figure out what the next steps are for this program. And then once that's all done, at the end of the day, they would end up cutting a PO and or a contract to you, and you get paid through the system. You could do paper invoices, but I think that whole ACH electronic payment functionality would be best for anyone. And go from there and just provide the products and services that are outlined in the proposal that the cannabis department is looking for. And so Jeremy and team, that's really it. There's a couple more steps you could go to, but like I said, since this is in production, I don't want OCA calling me up and saying, why are you bidding on this event? And take away my supplier record.
Well, let's not have that happen. Thank you, Michael West. I think this was a great start. Nikesh, if you wouldn't mind passing the ball back to me and I can get the presentation. Did everyone catch that watching our webinar? As a reminder, we will record this session, post it on our website, and you can come back to it as much as you need to. Thank you again, Michael. And as we sort of transition our screens here, just want to note it's a reasonable question that someone would ask, why would we have to go through this process to receive funds for grants? Very reasonable question. So the Office of Cannabis had to develop its own infrastructure to facilitate this process. We also had to plug in to the city's existing infrastructure to facilitate payments. That is this supplier portal. Payments will get dispersed to the businesses, not necessarily the individuals. And because this is the first of its kind, we're not only building the house to disperse grants, we're laying down the foundation to streamline future efforts. It is unlikely that folks that will go through this process the first time with a specific business entity will have to repeat this process. But this is an important first step for not only this grants, but if more come down the pike, to be able to get folks plugged in for future efforts.
And Jeremy, you should now have the ability to share your screen.
Terrific. And if the panelists don't mind, time check, we're close to 1 p.m. If folks don't mind, I'd like for us to go just a little bit over to field some questions. So the application process, folks might be wondering, well, what do I have to do now? Everyone's first goal, those that are eligible, is to register as a bidder. That is everyone's homework assignment for the immediate future. Michael and I will connect on the sourcing event at a later time to get you through to the supplier process. But first and foremost, we'll need folks to become a bidder. While you're going through that process to become a bidder, there's a grant application available on the Office of Cannabis website. There, you'll answer some demographic questions, business information, and estimate your reimbursements. And to sort of get the ball rolling on some Q&A down the line, Nikesh, if you wouldn't mind opening up the chat, so folks can start to enter their questions. That way we can save some time on the back end. So bringing this back to the application, register as a bidder, complete the application on our website. It will be more efficient if you can include your bidder number on that application. If it is taking you more time, you're welcome to submit the application, email the Office of Cannabis separately for your bidder number. We will create a sourcing event. We will continue to provide communications to the community when the point of time comes to transition from a bidder to a supplier. Once a supplier, you will enter into a grants contract with the city that will explicitly outline the terms and conditions as a part of this grant program. Once executed, that grants contract, then we'll start the process to claim reimbursements. That is documenting your expenses and going through that process. We will have an insurance webinar down the line. It's likely we may do another supplier portal webinar, but quickly highlighting potential insurance requirements. We've connected with our risk managers, and these requirements will kick into gear once someone is operating. If you're an operating cannabis business, you'll likely need to demonstrate your proof of insurance for any of these that are applicable to you. For our applicants, you will not necessarily need these in place now, but it will be a condition of your grant to have applicable insurance in place when you secure your cannabis business permit. As far as the reimbursement process, once we navigate through those other areas we identified earlier, we'll execute a grants contract, meaning we'll sign it, both parties, the equity applicant and the City and County of San Francisco. Accounting will create a purchase order. The equity applicant, the supplier, will submit their invoice to the OOC. The OOC will review and either reject or approve and convey that determination to accounting to remit payment. Here we see what a reimbursement form may look like. We might tweak this further, but it will be important for every eligible applicant to maintain their purchase order number. And for each item you're hoping to get a reimbursement for, so let's say first you want payment for rent. Use your PO number -1 for that first payment. Let's say subsequently you need help with pulling fees at the Department of Building Inspection to support that payment. You'll use your same PO number -2, so on and so forth for all of your expenses. And again, this is a recorded webinar. We'll make this available and definitely feel free to review as needed. And as a part of submitting questions for the FAQ, these will be written questions. that my colleague here, Nikesh, will be able to echo back to us all. So please utilize that chat function. We won't get to everyone. I still encourage you to submit your written questions, and we'll compile those questions as a part of our FAQ. And before we get to timelines, really quick, just as a reminder, folks have a certain amount of funds available to them. It's not an entitlement. You need to draw down those funds by about mid-March. Otherwise, they go back into the pot for reimbursement. And these payments will be made to your business, not you as an individual, your equity business. So remember, when you submitted your cannabis business permit application, you input your business account number with the Treasurer and Tax Collector's Office. So just giving that reminder. With that being said, I'd like to give Yulia an opportunity to just echo back these timelines. Nikesh, will you be able to pass the mic to Yulia so she can remind folks about some important time periods?
Jeremy, no problem. I'll go ahead and do it right now. And Yulia, you should have the mic. It's all yours.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. So the direct grants application launched yesterday on October 14th. And so today we're having our educational webinar. So the deadline to submit your written questions will be on Wednesday, October 21st. And then on Wednesday, October 28th, the questions will be posted. The answers will be posted online. There will be another educational webinar on October 29th on the insurance requirements, as Jeremy already mentioned. The deadline to submit application will be December 1st. And then the deadline to claim reimbursements will be next year on March 12th. So the grant disbursements are anticipated at the end of this year or early next year.
Terrific. Thank you, Yulia. And I believe, Nikesh, is the PowerPoint still on, or is it on me, the camera?
It's still on, Jeremy.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you. So we'll give an opportunity to answer some questions, and I'll conclude with some final thoughts. Nikesh, when you're ready, please feel free to convey some of the questions.
Sure, Jeremy. Here is the first question that we received. Hi, Jeremy. Congrats on this rollout. Not all equity applicants have big, well-funded operators, and as such, some service providers provided services for eligible expenses on a deferred payment schedule. Are these invoices eligible funding? Technically, they are not, quote, reimbursed expenses since they are outstanding invoices. Thanks.
Excellent question to the stakeholder that posed it. So bearing in mind that we, with our input with the Cannabis Oversight Committee, the goal is to ultimately spend down all the funds that will be made available to equity applicants. With that in mind, the goal for this first round is to spend down funds by about mid-March. If there are outstanding funds, then there will be an opportunity to redistribute so folks that have immediate expenses are able to submit reimbursements. That was a long way of saying we will reimburse actual expenses, not on a deferred payment schedule, because we'll need concrete expenses. Bear in mind, there are multiple eligible expenses. So if perhaps one item is on this deferred schedule, someone could look to their rent payment to exhaust their payments. But I wanted to provide some context why it's important to have actual expenses from here until March, and the goal of spending all these funds down so that there's nothing, so that there's limited or very little remaining. That is certainly the goal.
Jeremy, thank you for that response. And if there are no other comments, I can go on to the next question as well.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So with that, the next question is from an applicant. I have 2 equity businesses that are eligible for up to $49K in reimbursement funds. Would each business qualify for $49K in funding, or is there a maximum amount one person can be awarded?
Mm-hmm.
And then there's a follow-up question. The follow-up question is, are the reimbursements considered taxable income?
Okay, excellent, excellent, excellent. All good questions. So as a part of the Cannabis Oversight Committee recommendations, funds are per equity applicant to calculate funds, not for each of their applications. So let's say Jeremy, verified equity applicant, one person, but I have two different businesses. If I'm eligible for 49,000, I just get 49K, not times two across the applications. With that being said, given our supplier portal, folks will need to determine their one business for the purpose of receiving payments. You will be unable to have business A, B, C, D. And that is that's a small portion, relatively small portion of our equity applicant pipeline. So again, folks will need to determine which business to register. That will be the business that will receive funds. Funds are per equity applicant, not per irons in the fire, not per multiple applications. The max for this first round is up to those amounts. So if you're 100% referred to planning, 100% owner, up to $100,000. Everyone else up to about $49,000 to spend down by about mid-March. As far as taxable income, that is an excellent question. In our capacity, we are unable to provide tax guidance. This is an important point, and we certainly encourage everyone here to consult tax professionals, perhaps leverage the pro bono attorney program, but that is something to bear in mind.
Thank you, Jeremy. I'll go on to the next question. It reads, what about past expenses for projects that have been paid? Say, security implementation.
Sure. So we are relatively fixed in our grant term where, by and large, most folks will need to demonstrate their expenses within the grant term. With that being said, there may be we can't commit to this, but there may be some flexibility for those equity applicants that are operating already to be designated as sort of this quote unquote legacy operators. And for that group of people, they might be able to get reimbursable expenses incurred prior to the grant period. We will certainly communicate further with that group if we're able to facilitate that, certainly understanding that folks have endeavored through a process and have incurred payments prior to this grant term. Again, there are alternatives available, existing and ongoing expenses, but that is an area that we hear the community is interested in, and we will certainly look into the matter further and correspond with you all accordingly.
Jeremy, thanks for your response. There's another question in the queue. If we have time for it, I can go ahead and read it.
Please.
Okay. The question is, what if an equity applicant has two shops, one at 100% and one at 40%? Does that mean the applicant can only apply for one location, presumably the one they own at 100%?
Another good question. So what we've outlined is using folks, if they have multiple applications, using their highest percentage ownership, their highest threshold to receive the most amount of funds. This was something deliberately thought of with our partners, that 100% applicants, because the thought is that they're shouldering the expenses on their own, that they receive additional funds. So with that being said, on one hand, you'll have to choose the business to secure payments, but for our purposes, we've calculated the disbursements based on the highest amount of funds that one could get. For more granular, unique circumstances, again, most folks don't have multiple applications. For those that do, I encourage them to continue to write to the Office of Cannabis. We can look into the matter further, but in short, it will be disbursements for one of your businesses, and we've calculated fund disbursement based on the most amount folks can get, the 100% owners referred to planning, and then evenly divided the remaining funds for everyone else. And I know we're running a little long, so perhaps one last question and I'll conclude with final thoughts.
And with that last question, Jeremy, there are no more questions for the time being.
Excellent. Thank you, Nikesh. As questions come up, please write to cannabisgrants@sfgov.org. We thank you for your partnership. COVID-19 has certainly posed many challenges to the community and organizations in this region. The city and county of San Francisco is facing an economic downturn with corresponding restraints. It's anticipated that reimbursements may face delays given the volume. Please continue to be patient. We will do our best to prioritize this work. With that being said, this is an exciting and historical development as we approach 50 years of the Controlled Substances Act and the war on drugs. The Office of Cannabis and the City and County of San Francisco is excited to embark with you on this journey together. Thank you for joining us, and we'll be in touch. And with that, Nikesh, that'll conclude our webinar.
Thank you, Jeremy. And with that, I will be turning off the recording and closing the meeting. Have a great day, everyone.